Welcome to SproutCast, where we speak with changemakers, social innovators, and entrepreneurs about how to make the world a better place. And now, here's your host, Julia Duffy.
Welcome back to SproutCast. My name is Julia Duffy, and today we're speaking with Steve Speldewinde, founder of The Social Deck. Steve is an innovator, entrepreneur, community builder, and digital strategist with experience in public health policy and reform. Steve started The Social Deck, a communications consultancy helping socially conscious organisations really get to the heart of social change with social marketing programs and practical tools designed to promote a cause, influence a behaviour, and engage people in actions. Today we'll be speaking with Steve about key tips for startups and the biggest hurdles and challenges faced by social enterprises and NFPs. Welcome to SproutCast, Steve.
Thanks, Julia. Thanks for having me on.
So I'm really interested to talk to you today about the not-for-profit organisations and social enterprises that you've been working with and kind of the work that you do with them at The Social Deck and at IdeasHoist. Could you tell me a little bit about this work that you do and how you got into that?
Yeah, sure thing. So we started The Social Deck actually when we were living over in New York for a year in about 2009. And we'd gone over with the aim of doing some work with some not-for-profits or social enterprises over there. And pretty soon, as we started to look at some of the job ads, we noticed that pretty much everyone needed help with communications, marketing, and social media. So we started a little consultancy and we launched it at the Mashable Social Good Summit and went from there. And basically, we worked with a lot of kind of small startup social enterprises or social businesses. There's a small games company that was called Warning Label Games that was making games for change, so sort of iPhone games that would help address issues like distracted driving. And a little company called The Mutual, which basically gave people perks at local businesses in return for donations to environmental charities. So it was a really good start, and the New York kind of social enterprise community is amazing. We could have basically gone to a new social enterprise meetup every night of the week if we'd so chosen, and we went to a lot, but not every night. And then we came back to Australia and decided to continue with the Social Deck over here, doing similar stuff, but also doing a bit more work with federal government and local councils, as well as the social enterprise and not-for-profit sector.
Wonderful. So why was it NFPs and social enterprises that you wanted to work with? What drew you to this area? Was there a particular kind of history with this sector? And maybe also what was your first kind of experience or interaction with the NFP sector?
I guess what drew us to it was we both, and this is Kate and I, my business partner, we both worked in government and seen the way government approaches social issues and how they address them. And we both kind of, out of that had a desire to look at the way not-for-profits and social enterprises work on addressing social issues and to do some work with them kind of outside of the government context, more kind of on the ground, hands-on, as opposed to a policy kind of role.
That's really fascinating. What do you think makes it possible for organisations to tackle these problems in a different way or maybe better than government?
I think not-for-profits can be much more kind of focused on a particular issue, whereas government has to have, by necessity, has to kind of take a more overarching policy and strategic direction kind of role. A not-for-profit can really go in and say, we're going to fix this issue, we're going to provide water to this population, clean water to this population, or we're going to work on a way to reduce energy consumption, in this local area. So I think not-for-profits can work kind of hands-on at a local area on the ground, and be laser focused on addressing that particular issue, whereas government has to take a more strategic, overarching directional role.
And of course, the relationship between government and these organisations is something, I guess, is a challenge for a lot of organisations and has an impact on their sustainability in some situations if they're tied to funding. Aside from that, or perhaps in addition to that, what are some of the biggest hurdles that you're seeing these organisations face at the moment?
I think you're right, Julia. Funding is a key issue that any not-for-profit or social enterprise or startup faces. Trying to work out how to get enough funding to get your idea off the ground in the first place, and then how to create a sustainable source of revenue. I think a lot of not-for-profits, particularly in the kind of funding, government grant environment at the moment, it's hard. It's basically a full-time role, is seeking the next round of funding to make sure your organisation can continue. And I think a lot of not-for-profits find that really challenging, and that's why the kind of social enterprise sector is starting to really grow. Is that people are looking outside of government funding for that sustainable source of revenue, so they can continue to deliver their social impact, but without having reliance on just one source of funding, kind of diversifying where their money comes from.
And are you seeing any organisations that are doing this in a particularly interesting way at the moment? Can you think perhaps of any examples, organisations you think have really done that differently in a way that's successful or may potentially be successful? Yeah,
I think there's a social enterprise called Pollinate Energy, and their mission is to provide clean energy to people in India who might not have access to it. So they provide solar lamps, for example, or clean fuels, cooktops, and stoves throughout India. And they're an Australian-based social enterprise. And what they've done really successfully is they've come up with a really good business model that engages partners really strategically. So they have a kind of social enterprise internship where people often from corporates or from universities can go over to India for 6 weeks, and they pay for this internship and help a local Indian entrepreneur set up their kind of arm of Pollinate Energy, where they'll go out and provide these solar lights and clean fuel stoves to people, and it's a sustainable business because they're making money. Clean energy is getting delivered to some people without access to it, and Pollinate Energy is getting funding from the interns who are going over. And they've also focused really strategically on building partnerships with related organisations here in Australia. So they partnered with a clean energy company here in Australia, whereby anyone who signs up through Pollinate Energy is donating on an ongoing basis through their power bill to Pollinate Energy. So they've basically looked at ways they can, provide this service and expand it. They're growing quite quickly without having to rely on government funding almost at all. I think they've done a really good job of that.
That's fascinating. I'm interested in what you mentioned there about partnerships, because it's definitely something we're hearing a lot of both established organisations and new organisations talking about. And I'm interested to know if you have any thoughts from the perspective of a new organisation starting up where the people maybe don't have strong connections in the sector yet, or in other industries perhaps, how they would go about perhaps finding other organisations to partner with, and how to kind of make decisions about the best way to connect with other organisations.
Yeah, so I think that's a really important process for any kind of social enterprise starting up, is to work out exactly what they're doing, what the competitive landscape looks like, and whether their competitors are actually could actually become strategic partners in their business. So kind of doing that analysis from the very beginning, as you're writing or if you're putting together a kind of business model canvas, looking at who you might partner with and building in partnerships to your business model at the very start is a great way to get started. I also think that working out what your core set of values and what makes you uniquely placed to deliver them are, and then looking for partners that have those similar values and can provide assistance where perhaps you're not as strong, and so kind of playing to your strengths and playing to their strengths. I think it's also key when you're approaching a partner to work out what you can offer them. Don't approach a partner as a donor. Approach it as an exchange of value. So work out what your assets are. Do you have an amazing social media presence? Do you have access to a set of customers that your potential corporate partner might want to engage with? Do you have a great set of data that might be useful for the corporate? And then working out how you might arrange that partnership so that you both get mutual value and that they can help you deliver your mission.
Excellent. And what's some other advice that you might have perhaps for organisations starting up about how to, just in general, get their idea off the ground and get themselves situated in the market? Yeah,
so I think, one thing to do at the beginning is not to write a 40-page kind of business plan. Mm-hmm. I think everyone will find that, as soon as you actually get started, everything will change. So starting with something like a business model canvas to begin with, and there's heaps of resources online for anyone. I can share some links.
What was it called, sorry?
Business model canvas.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so starting with something like that and mapping out, what your unique value proposition is, who your key partners might be, how you're going to promote your organisation, how you're going to share it with others, what your mission is and what social impact you're going to deliver, in a kind of 1 or 2 page document that's really adaptable and you can update on a kind of, monthly or quarterly basis is a really good place to start. I think making sure that you share your idea with everyone. Don't be worried about someone stealing your idea. People generally just aren't going to do that. It's your idea that you're passionate about. Sharing it with someone else who's passionate enough to do it is more likely to find you a co-founder, which is great, than someone who's going to take it and compete with you. And then I think there's a lot of really great help out there for social entrepreneurs at the moment. I think it's pretty amazing to see what's happened just over the last 3 or 4 years in terms of organisations that are supporting social entrepreneurs to deliver social change. Organisations like Foundation for Young Australians with their Young Social Pioneers program, School for Social Entrepreneurs and Impact Academy. They're all really great organisations that can kind of step you through the process of starting up your organisation, connect you with potential partners, possibly introduce you to funders, and really help you to hone down on your social enterprise business model and how you're going to deliver impact, over the course of an 8-week or 12-week incubator program. So I think reaching out to organisations like that from the start gives you, a massive head start over trying to just do the whole thing yourself.
Excellent. And so we've kind of covered this in a couple of ways already, I guess, but I'm interested to know if you can perhaps list for us or just explore maybe some of the factors that you believe help these types of organisations to really stand out and to be successful. So maybe not just startups, but more established organisations as well.
I think being a really good communicator is key. If you're passionate about what you're doing, the ability to communicate that effectively to the people you're talking to through your website, through your social media, through your pitching is essential. The organisations that really stand out are the ones that can tell a story about what they're doing and why they're doing it, and what the impact is going to be. So, for example, just to take the Pollinate Energy example again, they have a great annual report that shows exactly what the impact of what they're doing is. So anyone who's provided support to them, whether it be engaging as an intern, following them on social media, donating to them, gets a really good picture of where their money's going and how that's positively impacting people's lives. So I think kind of closing the loop all the time for people and showing that because they've got your support, they're able to achieve their goals is a really good way of standing out. And not everyone does it well, but the people that do it well, are the ones that continue to grow, continue to get funding, and continue to get support from the community.
Excellent. I'm very interested to hear you talk about measuring impact there, and I guess you've kind of mentioned it a couple of times already. What kind of impact do you think being able to measure and communicate your organization's impact has on its success and its engagement with stakeholders?
I think it's crucial. I think it's something that you have to kind of set up. You have to build it into your business model and the operations of your organization. So you need to say, when you're setting out your mission, you should say, if our mission is to reduce energy consumption in Adelaide by 50%, you have to work out exactly how you're going to measure that, measure that mission as you go. So in order to measure that, we'll collect data from, the energy company that we're partnering with and track that over time. So I think, you have to build it into your business model. That collection of data that can show that your organisation is actually effective at achieving its mission. A lot of organisations will have a mission set down, but they don't have that built in. And for supporters, if they're not seeing, the reason they're supporting you is because they believe in your mission. But if they're not seeing you achieve it, there's so many competitors out there that they're going to, shift their support to someone else.
I guess when you're talking about your organization's mission too, like having these metrics built in helps you to know how you're traveling and, perhaps what you could be achieving on top of that, or, whether you need to really step it up too, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Being able to go, okay, we're, not quite reaching our targets or we've exceeded our targets. That's great data to be able to have, and it's great to be able to motivate your staff with as well. I think it's just really important to kind of build that in.
So if we can travel back to startups for a moment now, and startups and new organisations, I was hoping you might have some advice for someone who is thinking of moving over to the non-profit or social enterprise space for the first time, and maybe what their expectations should be and what might be unexpected to them about this sector.
So I think, if you're moving into the kind of startup social enterprise or any young organisation, you should expect very little structure. Every day is going to be different. So if you're used to being able to plan your week, your month, your year, you're going to find yourself quite surprised by what you have to do in startup. You're also going to have to be really adaptable, and you don't just have one role generally. Generally, you'll be doing marketing, you'll be doing finances, you'll be meeting with potential funders and investors. You'll be doing partnership pitches. You kind of become you have to be able to do every role, because you usually don't have more than 2 or 3 people involved at the beginning. So being a bit of a generalist as well as being able to offer specialist skills is key, and being adaptable.
So another thing that's kind of related to that, I guess, is the process of moving from having an idea and an initial concept for an organization or for a program, and then moving into actually creating something, actually starting an organization and getting people on board and all those kind of technical processes. I'm interested to know your thoughts on how to manage that process and how you know that your organization or your project is ready to take the next step from an idea, and how you'd really get that started.
Yeah, so I think, from the idea stage to the launch stage, there's a lot of work to be done. You need to work out, exactly who your customers are going to be, or who are the people you're going to be serving through your program or your enterprise. You need to work out, are those customers willing to pay, or do you need to look to other sources of funding for your idea? And I think one of the things that a lot of people are using to kind of validate their idea at the moment is crowdfunding. People, it's a great way to see if your idea is going to get traction. If you put together a great pitch for your idea, explain what it's going to do, who it's going to impact, and then put it up on a crowdfunding site. You can see if you've got if your network and their network are willing to put money behind it, and if they are, that's some great validation that what you're onto, that your idea is capable of being realised.
Excellent. And without necessarily naming any names or throwing anyone under the bus, can you think of any examples perhaps of common mistakes that you're seeing organisations make or struggle with?
One common mistake is to kind of not launch early enough. So there's been some pretty high profile occurrences where a startup, not necessarily a social enterprise, has spent, has got investors on board, has spent, loads of money on, developing their products, but they haven't tested whether customers will actually use it and engage with it. And it comes as a huge shock when after, you spent $1 million developing your idea, it gets no traction and no repeat customers. People might check it out because you've spent a lot on marketing, but they don't actually engage with what you've built. And so I think that's a huge problem. You're better off, launching with the kind of simplest version of your product or your program, and working out at that point whether you can gain traction, then you can add features and as you start to build it.
I guess that kind of
validate it.
Sorry. I guess that kind of links back to what you were saying earlier about not spending too much time on the business plan, because chances are you might have to rethink everything that you were doing once you actually get out there. Was that coming from a similar idea?
Yeah, exactly right. To give an example of a startup that I started myself, we built this is coming out of, I did a Masters of Entrepreneurship over at Lund University in Sweden, and we built a social network for recreational fishermen. And it was based on Twitter. So what it essentially did was it pulled in all the tweets that were tweets about fishing, and tagged them according to what species of fish it was, what sort of bait they were using, all of these kind of things. But before we launched that, we did a photo competition, and we got heaps of traction on this photo competition. It was a really simple website. It was just upload your photo, and people will rate it, and and the person with the highest rating at the end of 30 days wins a prize. That got heaps of traction, and we thought, great, now that's validated our idea. And then we launched Fish Twits, but it didn't get anywhere near as much traction as the initial photo competition. But we didn't realize, for some reason or another, we didn't realize that what people were actually interested in was sharing photos fishing, not being able to see all the tweaks about fishing.
Ah, okay.
So kind of
tested in a slightly different area than the actual idea was.
Yeah, exactly. So the promotional product, the kind of pre-launch product, was much better than our final product, and we should have gotten onto that early.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess that's a learning experience and something that a lot of organisations in their early stages are probably finding, and moving along that process can be very valuable, because it's probably not something you'll do again, I guess.
Exactly right. And it also kind of comes back to that, making sure you're measuring what you're doing as you go along. If we'd had instituted key metrics to monitor as we launched both products, we would have seen really quickly that the traction we were getting for the photo competition was much higher than the traction we were getting for people browsing tweets about fishing. We could have refocused much earlier, rather than spending more time and energy on developing new features and promoting what we've built.
Interesting. Yeah, it's definitely something that's probably applicable to a lot of people. Perhaps if we move back to what is working in the sector and things that the people are doing within organisations or as a whole organisation that you're finding interesting at the moment, or inspiring, or a great example of things that the sector can achieve. I was wondering if you had any stories that you could share with people like this.
So I think, as I mentioned before, organisations like Foundation for Young Australians, School for Social Entrepreneurs, Impact Academy are all doing a really great job of helping people through that start phase. And out of those organisations, out of their kind of incubator programs, there's been, really a lot of great social enterprises have launched and are starting to flourish. Examples that I mentioned before was Pollinate Energy, but there's also an organisation called Promise or Pay, which is a social enterprise dedicated to kind of helping you achieve your goals. You promise to do X, and if you don't meet your goal, you donate some money to charity. They're doing a really good job, and there again they focused quite heavily on building strategic partnerships, and that's how they're getting traction. So leveraging their partners' networks to get people engaged in their product has been really, really good for them. There's a guy called Dan Poole who just launched a food cart called Crates for Change. Basically, just like a little food truck down in Melbourne, I think it is, where they make crates, and money goes to good causes, and they also employ underemployed people. There's literally hundreds of great examples of social enterprises and social entrepreneurs that are doing good stuff, and we profiled a lot of them on IdeasHoist in the social entrepreneurs category. And I encourage everyone to check it out.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of an inspiring exercise, really, to take a look at what other people are doing and maybe get a different perspective on how you could approach a social issue or a need in the community that you might be seeing.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's great to do that kind of research, and you often uncover insights that you hadn't thought of. When people are kind of building their business models, their initial thought was, we'll charge people to do X, and what they end up with was that we'll do X for free, but we'll charge partners to, we'll charge businesses to engage with our customers. So the shift in business model as they start to develop their enterprise is really interesting to look at, and it's great to make you think of ways that you could frame your business model differently.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. So from not necessarily the beginning stage, but as the organisations are growing and they're changing the structure of their organisation, the business model.
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that's worthwhile considering as you start, because they've obviously changed for a reason, and perhaps you can avoid those 6 months of pursuing something that in the end isn't going to be the most effective business model for you.
It's very interesting. And so I guess we've actually started to answer what was going to be my final question, which is whether you had any suggestions for individuals who are thinking of becoming involved in the sector, not necessarily starting their own organisation, but perhaps how they can contribute and how they can find out about what's going on, which obviously we've already talked about, but how they can find out where or how they can contribute.
Yeah, I think a common theme is that we in every interview we do on IdeasHoist, we ask are you looking for funding, marketing help, financial advice, and the answer is almost inevitably yes, we're looking for all of that. And I guess a really good way to get started, and a way that I got started myself in the sector, is to do some pro bono work for not-for-profits or social enterprises. Work out what your unique skills are, and look for not-for-profits that are, or social enterprises that could use your help, and then try and connect with them, through social media, or Pro Bono Australia often has pro bono opportunities, the same as ethical jobs. And find an organisation that inspires you. Find one that needs the skills that you have, and try and do a project with them, and try and make it a really defined project, not a. I think where a lot of people run into problems with pro bono work from both sides, as an organisation engaging someone pro bono and as a pro bono worker, is where you have a project that doesn't have any kind of defined scope. So setting a time period for that pro bono work and a key deliverable is a really good way of making sure that everyone ends up happy with the process.
Excellent. So before I let you go today, how can people get in contact with you, Steve, if they want to learn more about what you're doing or ask any questions about what you said today?
Yeah, sure. So you can send me an email anytime, steve@thesocialdeck.com. Get in touch on Twitter, on @IdeasHoist or @thesocialdeckpr. And you visit our website, thesocialdeck.com.au or ideashoist.com.au.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for speaking with me today, Steve. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, Julie. I really enjoyed it.
Did you enjoy this episode of SproutCast? Visit SproutCast.net to sign up for our newsletter. The newsletter includes copies of the show notes and additional content from each episode.